The views and opinions expressed by participants in the following public affairs program do not necessarily reflect the position or beliefs of WDEF or its staff.
This is Point of View, celebrating a world record-breaking 62 years of quality public affairs programs from the studios of WDEF News 12, Chattanooga.
Hello and welcome to the 2016 Year in Review of the news that affected you, me, and everyone else that lives and works in the Chattanooga and metropolitan area. I'm Maurice Lewis, your host for Point of View, and very glad that you could join us today as we welcome an esteemed panel of those who report and also repeat and talk about the news. Let's start with Brian Joyce, Talkmaster from WGOW, celebrating your 5th year.
Almost 5 years. Almost 5 years, Maurice. And I do remember you're one of the first guys I met in Chattanooga, so it's great to be reunited with you.
That's only because we both have a Boston history, and we know
We do.
words like chowder and Avid Yard and things of that nature.
Right, yep.
And for our viewers here and for people around town, you all know John Mercer, who is our principal anchor here at Channel 12. You've seen a lot that's happened in the past year.
It's been a very interesting year and kind of a sad year too as well as far as the news goes.
Absolutely. And you know, a new person with us, Ellis Smith, you are the web editor for Chattanooga Times Free Press.
Yeah, I've been doing that since about 2010, and just in that short period of time, there's been so many changes in how we report the news, and sadly this year, and what kind of news we're reporting.
I want to start this off by, I was talking with our producer, Austin, just before we started the show, and he said, "Was I've been searching to find something good that happened in 2016. So, Brian, let's start with you.
Well, I think that's always an interesting conversation to have, especially with media types, because I was just having this conversation in the lobby, and I think there's a tendency, obviously, to focus on the negative, especially when you're talking about the national media outlets that really dictate the tone of the country. I think in reality, there's a lot of positivity happening in this country and a lot of positive things. But, you know, certainly the election dominated the news. On the international front, terrorism, terrorist attacks dominate the news. I think a lot of the national media outlets like to feed that frenzy. I think sometimes it has a negative effect. A lot of times it has a negative effect. I think that trickles down. But in reality, I think we can all agree there's positive things happening in our own lives. There's positive things happening in this community and all around the United States.
Well, I'll quote a Massachusetts politician, Tip O'Neill, who said, all politics are local, and John Mercer covering local news and talking about the up close and personal things. What strikes you most about 2016?
I think one thing is we had a lot of tragedies. We had the Woodmore bus crash that happened here in Chattanooga. We had the fires in the Gatlinburg area. We had just devastating flooding. But in each of these cases, through that tragedy, we saw communities coming together and saying, we're not going to let this define us. And I think that was one of the greatest things to see about 2016 is people coming together to help the Woodmore bus crash victims, to help the people in Gatlinburg because of the horrible fires that happened in Sevier County. I was really impressed by that, and it makes you proud to be a Tennessean.
From the web standpoint, this is how more and more people get their news, and there are the dangers of this new phrase that's out, fake news. So you're responsible for putting out news in a way that more and more people are accustomed to receiving their information.
Yeah, it's been, as I said, it's been a huge transition just since I've taken over. I mean, we've moved heavily, as everyone has, into social media, and when you get into social media, you get into, well, my cousin's brother-in-law heard that, you know, from a friend of his who's a police officer.
Whose cousin said,
and this is true, and that'll get shared 1,000 times, and then meanwhile, you know, we might have a pretty good story up, you know, that very day that people will say, oh, that's not, I don't know about that. So part of what we have to do is figure out how to kind of speak the language of people, how to kind of reach people where they are with these stories and try to get them the real news and try to package it up and market it to them in a way that they can consume it. We can't keep feeding people the same stuff in the same way when they're, you know, our audiences are kind of moving. So
we have to do it in a more concise manner?
Yeah, sometimes you do. Twitter, of course, you very much do. Facebook, you can talk a little bit more on Facebook now, but we have, you know, you have to have different strategies for each kind of medium in which you play.
One of the stories that picked up a lot of rumor and innuendo involved conduct for high officials in City Hall.
You've heard that rumor?
I've heard that rumor. Yes, people oftentimes ask me about that rumor. I think that put some people. I think that put. I think a lot of local media outlets. Well, I'm not a journalist. I'm a commentator, and I told my audience, and I have said this for years, well before anything surfaced regarding Mayor Andy Burke. But that sort of stuff is not really what kind of stimulates me. I know there's a lot of media outlets that love to cover that stuff because it is juicy and it's scandalous, and maybe
But
I don't
it's
know.
an allegation.
It's an allegation.
Exactly.
It's just it's
not
never
proven, it's not
necessarily
fact.
been something in the days of Bill Clinton's administration. That's not really an angle that I ever particularly cared about. Look, people are in the public eye. They obviously need to conduct themselves a certain way. Anything they're doing behind closed doors, if it affects their job that they're doing and their public persona, I think it's worth talking about. But aside from that, I prefer to just let people's personal lives be their personal lives.
Your profession is interesting in that you get almost instant feedback. People can pick up the phone and reach you from wherever they are.
Sure.
But John, we get calls in the newsroom and people send faxes and tweets and tricks to you.
Yeah, and kind of going on what Ellis had said, we get a lot of people asking about the fake news all the time. People will call the newsroom and say, hey, I saw on Facebook that this, blah, 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 and I go, well, that's not true. Are you sure? Right. And they question you, and I say, well, yeah.
But if it's on Facebook, it
But
must be
it's
true,
got to be
right?
true,
It's
right?
on the
But-
internet.
true.
I heard
But
it.
and that I think that's been frustrating because for a lot of people, because fake news, people a lot of times aren't getting their news
exciting.
any other way. Now through social media is how people get their news. Maybe they're not watching the news anymore, and they're not necessarily reading the newspaper anymore. They're going on Facebook, Twitter, and these kind of places and saying, "Oh, well, it was there. It was on social media. It's got to be true." And that it can be frustrating. But I think that we try to tell people, and I'm sure Brian does too, on the radio. No, that's what you heard, but it's not true, and here's what is the fact. So it's hard, though.
One of the things that a lot of people were interested in as we watched the Violence Reduction Act, what has happened, the numbers are pretty close to what they have been in the last several years in terms of violence. But the Violence Reduction Act never really lived up to its billing in some people's eyes.
It hasn't reduced violence.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that Larry Groen is going to be using in his campaign against Mayor Andy Burke, talking about, hey, has this really worked? And Mayor Burke has been very, obviously, strongly in support of the VRI, saying that this violence reduction initiative is going to work and give it some time. So that could be a political issue coming up in the election.
I think that's another area, though, where sometimes the negativity gets in front of the real story. Now, when the mayor says violence is down in Chattanooga, that is correct. Right. Violent crime is down in Chattanooga. Shootings, gang shootings specifically, up.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people tend to confuse and conflate the two with each other. Well, my God, crime can't be down because look at all of these shootings. These shootings are being obviously...
You're talking about the 1%, 2%, and 3%ers shooting among themselves.
We're talking about a small minority of certain communities out there where this violence is happening. The vast majority of people in the inner city communities of Chattanooga have nothing to do with this, don't want anything to do with it, but unfortunately it is. I've talked with the police chief dozens of times about this. They know the names of these guys. It's a couple of hundred people, tops,
when you look
that are
at
terrorizing the rest of the city.
At the justice system, some of the same people that you see in court over and over again make bail and they're
Absolutely.
right back out. So there hasn't been a real hue and cry on reform in the criminal justice sentencing part of this thing.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, it's been tough to measure because when this was first pitched, it was about shootings.
Yeah.
It was designed to reduce shootings, and that didn't happen. Shootings are going to hit 140 this year, I think, compared to a couple of less last year, and they've gone up a few dozen in the last 3 or 4 years. So shootings are up. As now, some other forms of violent crime are down. Your armed robberies, things like that. But then you get into if we're measuring everything, what about property crime? What about
exactly.
break-ins? Well, those are up. So I mean, for me, I'm taking the original measuring stick that the administration used when they first offered this program, which was shootings, and it has not reduced those. Now,
No, it hasn't.
you could argue other forms of violence are down, and that's true, and that's great, especially for the vast majority of people. But I think a lot of people are being affected by this. I would argue that point a little bit because some of those, if there's a shooting that's happening down the block from you or down the street, you may not be hit by the bullet, but that certainly affects your community. That certainly affects your sense of safety, your sense of being okay in your home, and whether or not you can you have to sleep on the floor so you don't get hit by a
You know,
bullet.
Yeah, well, in fact, I've actually talked to some people who don't even live in Chattanooga, who live in North Georgia or other areas, and they're like, well, I'm not coming to Chattanooga because I
Yeah,
saw on
I've
the
heard from
news.
many people
And they,
like that.
they say, and I'm like, well, this is, as you said, this is a small minority of people that are doing these shootings, a very small group, but yet
It does
people
have those
think,
effects.
but it does, I mean, you know, perception is reality in that case, where people
Yeah.
say, oh my gosh, there's a lot of shootings in Chattanooga. Yeah, there are, but, I mean, are you going to get shot?
Probably not.
Yeah, so.
There's another perception that's happening in that there is an outright revolt against the education system here in Hamilton County for failing to produce quality candidates for employers to hire. We have the people on the mountain saying, listen, we want to pull out of the Hamilton County school system. What's been your reactions as you watch this unfold?
I get phone calls about this all the time. Again, to your point, I get the immediate feedback from callers calling into talk radio, and by and large, parents, people, they are fed up with Hamilton County schools. I think the situation with Ooltewah and the incident in Gatlinburg, that was bad enough. Now we see allegations that with this bus crash with the Woodmore students, the warning signs were out there, complaints were being made, the school system was not following up on that, the bus company was not following up. I think a lot of people are very fed up, and they're wondering where their tax dollars are going and what kind of people are in charge.
I think if you would look back to what happened with the Ooltewah case, when you look at that, Rick Smith decided to take early retirement. If he hadn't, I think that he probably, the superintendent, would have probably been thrown out of office somehow by the school board.
There's
And if
an
you look at the
expression
election,
called summarily dismissed.
yeah,
Or retired. you
and
know.
the school board, the elections, the most recent school board election, the only person that survived was Rhonda Thurman. Everyone else was voted out of office after the Ooltewah incident happened. So obviously there was a lot of frustration.
Yeah.
You know, we have this good employment news is coming for Volkswagen and the other suppliers looking for quality people to hire, but they can't find people who can meet the testing standards. So you have private employers basically taking over the job of the school system.
And we've covered this, yeah. You've got big carpet makers down in Dalton. They've basically set up their own education institutions. Others are working with Chat State in order to basically teach these guys the math, the science, the reading, the mechatronics, you know, the science that they need to operate the machines of tomorrow's manufacturers.
Which I think that's one
That's
of
great.
It is. It's a great development over the past 5 to 10 years. Is that we don't necessarily need to rely on traditional education. Traditional education is obviously still a great way to go, probably the best way to go. But there's a lot of ways to educate yourselves and give yourself the skills that will get you a job moving forward.
You know, in the minute and a half that we have left, each of you, what are you most optimistic about for 2017?
My goodness. Hopefully, I don't know, less celebrities dying, less great bands, musicians that I love to listen to. Hopefully, they'll all survive 2017. I don't know.
Yeah, it's been a tough year for celebrities and musicians. I'm looking forward to hopefully people starting to come together more. The election was very divisive, whether you were voting for Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. People were very much at odds, and I'm hoping that people can, at some point, realize we're all in this together. You know, we're all human. We all got to make it work somehow. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Alice?
Well, a recent study that we just had a story on today showed that Chattanooga was most improved out of a study of the 200 of the biggest U.S. metropolitan areas. A lot of new job prospects, tech jobs, all sorts of great things happening here with Volkswagen. So people who are looking for employment, who want to make their lives better, there are those opportunities there in Chattanooga.
That is a very interesting point to hold on to. I'm going to ask you to stick around a little bit more. Brian Joyce, want to thank you very much.
Thank you, Maurice.
Our good Boston friend here. We can say welcome to the city even though you've been here. John Mercer, it's always a pleasure to have you here and working with you. I'm Maurice Lewis. Now listen, stay tuned. Tim Hooker is going to be here with us. We're going to take a look at some other things that have happened in our city with another person whose name is John. He's from the print media. Wait till you see what we have to talk about when Point of View continues. Hi, I'm Maurice Lewis. Thank you very much for staying with us for this historic second part of our look at what happened in the year 2016 in the view of news, sports, weather, you name it. Joining me as my co-host this afternoon, Tim Hooker. You have been a part of this show for many years. Welcome back, and thank you so very much for joining us today. Tell us about our guest.
Thank you. Our guest, Some of them are old friends, and some of them are new friends. That John and I, we have this, this yearly get together, and so I'm thinking about bringing chips and salsa next year. Just bring it. And we've had always had representatives from the Chattanooga Times Free Press, and so this year we have Ellis, who's with us, and being I'm an old code typer myself, so we have lots to talk about. And then we have Brian Joyce from WGOW, that we often have folks from there. So this is a good group. I look forward to doing the show every year. The question I'd like to start off with is, what have we learned this year? Because as a poli-sci minor, it was a big shock, back in 2008, when Barack Obama was able to leverage the internet to get that $2 donation, that $3 donation, and that just was a breakthrough in fundraising. And so as we look at the 2016 election, what have we learned? Because 2020 isn't as far away as we want to think it is. What did we learn as media people? What do those 2020 candidates have to use from what we've seen here?
I think what 2016 proved is that we're in a lot of ways heading into uncharted waters. We talked about fake news and the effect that has on people. So many people getting their information from social media, and I've been on top of that for years. I mean, with the advent of social media, that's a great thing. More Americans than ever, more people in the world have at their fingertips all this information. The problem is how much of that information is even accurate, and I think that's a whole new landscape that Americans are just now trying to learn to come to grips with, but especially the media, how we approach that. And
I'd like to piggyback on that a little bit, because traditionally we got to agree on a set of facts, and we'd argue about that set of facts. And typically the TV folks, and then the print folks, and the radio folks, we'd figure out what the facts were and then throw the red meat out there, and then folks would argue about that. But we're at a point now where I find we can't even agree on what facts to argue, and so you just, it's just very fragmented. So that's something, if somebody could figure that out, that would be fantastic.
Well, we learned that anything can happen. So this was very unexpected, and even the media was kind of blindsided by it. And so everybody is sort of apprehensive about what's going to happen next and what's the future going to bring. And I've always, it's one of the problems that I had with people, how they approached President Obama. There was a lot of disrespect for the office. The office of the president should always be respected. And I thought that for the first time in history, there was so much disrespect for the office. I have disagreed with lots of presidents, but I've always respected them. If I got a chance to meet them, if they were in the area, I respected the office of the president. I want to do that here too. Respect the office. I want to give him a chance to see what he can do. I mean, he's the president of the United States. Talking about Trump, of course. And I want to give him a chance to see if he can make some strides, make some progress, if that can happen. Of course, I wasn't one of the persons. Obviously, I didn't vote for one.
One of the things that I found really interesting is that 2016 proved that you can get a lot done if you can prick raw emotion.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, when you can prick raw emotion, you can find a scab or wound and just prick at it, pick at it, and pick at it. And the results have been astonishing, what has been accomplished on a political. On a positive side, I want to start with something that you just had in your newspaper. You talked about the fact for the first time in 15 years, there's new construction, home construction that's happening in Brainerd. That's 2016, that's news.
That is news. That is news. And especially the African American community has been looking at all the progress, particularly in the downtown area. I mean, even in ML King, it's finally gotten to ML King where I have my offices, and this historical African American thoroughfare has just been wondering for a long time. We are right downtown. When will it reach us? Everything is happening around us, Main Street and stuff like that.
Yeah, bike lanes.
But it's happening now. I mean, look, it's happening now. Look at the diversity. 20 years ago, you wouldn't see a white person walking down Martin Luther King Boulevard. But now it's just, it's so diverse. It's just different. People come back from out of town, they can't believe what has transpired. And it's just, it's good. I think it's good. I think it's a good thing.
I think to this point, when you talk about what we can do moving forward and what we can learn from 2016 is, to your point, slow things down. With all the social media, and all of these media influences bombarding us with stories and facts that may or may not be true. When you actually take a moment to just slow things down, put all the noise aside, things are good. Okay, here in Chattanooga, okay, the job market is looking good. Industry is looking good for 2017. The auto industry, home construction, development in areas where it never had been before. So it's very easy to fall into this, I think, this black hole of social media negativity where everything, America's heading in the wrong direction. This is my favorite quote of 2016. America's heading in the wrong direction. Meanwhile, you look at every economic indicator locally and nationally, and the vast majority of them are going up, up, up. And I think this is the problem. We're not just taking a moment like you are to say, wait a second, actually things are not that bad.
Well, the interesting thing is one campaign kind of fought the last war. I mean, Hillary had people boots on the ground in every state, lots and lots of money.
Very well organized.
Yeah. When you look at how little money Trump spent as opposed to how much Hillary spent, it's kind of like, are we fighting a new war here? Is there a whole new game for folks in the media? Are you holding a more central position now? Because I know back, we won't say how long ago, I used to write the Sunday op-ed column for one of the local papers, and I realized early on, if I wrote it, somebody'd believe it.
But you know, one of the interesting things that happened, there is something called guerrilla theater. And in Donald Trump perfected
Free advertising. We in the
resurrected-
media gave him $3 billion in free advertising.
He was the news. I mean,
And this, again, to my point of uncharted waters, you know this. Every time he tweets something out, which he does 16 times an hour, half the time it's either factually or it's factually challenged, let's put it that way. The media has to cover this because, well, it's our job. He's the president-elect.
If somebody says something that's wrong, sometimes you got to get out there and say, well,
Right.
actually, no disrespect, but here's the way it really is. Okay, continue your argument now.
It puts us in a very difficult position where now we're on the defense because we're going on the offense, but at the same time, either way, regardless of who's true and who's false, he already got the free advertising that he was looking for.
do you think that he knew what he was doing?
Yes.
Oh my goodness!
I think he's a genius.
So-
I think that's part of what Hillary did wrong, was that she underestimated the guy. She thought he was this buffoonish character, this TV personality, and I think in reality the guy is quite smart. Look, he started out with a little bit of money from his dad, $1 million. But as anybody around here will tell you, it's real easy to lose $1 million
Yes,
in
it
real
is.
estate in one deal. The guy turned that into a, give or take, $1 billion empire.
But
He's not stupid.
and
He
so
was
is-
so Teflon. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but he was so Teflon. The stuff that he did, it just seemed to not affect him at all. The average person that could have said and done some of the things that he did,
Absolutely.
it would have been over.
Yeah.
And so is this the new blueprint for campaigning? Be as audacious, be as shocking as possible, because you're going to get all this free coverage from the established media, and don't worry about fundraising, just the more outlandish the better, and that will get you the attention
Tim,
to
that's
get
a
you in
good
office.
point. And when you mentioned the mayoral race, this is an interesting mayoral race. How are you looking at this thing? How will it play out? You've got Larry Groen, Tea Party backing, very conservative. You've got the current mayor and maybe one or two other people, depending on if they stay in the race. How are you prognosticating on this?
Well, the mayor's in full campaign mode right now, as is Larry Groen, and he just got some other support from one of the other candidates as well. I mean, I think you're going to see some strong arguments about the direction the city is headed, in terms of how we're spending money, how things are organized, a top-down approach versus a grassroots approach that's favored by others. I think you're going to see a lot of rocks thrown at Andy Burke's administration, and he's going to have to be able to defend the decisions that he's made or not made.
Brian, is this important for him to win if he has aspirations for higher office?
I think there's the possibility for things getting negative here locally too, obviously with the allegations regarding the mayor and his assistants and what's going on in City Hall. Personally, knowing Larry Groen and knowing the man that he is, I don't think he's going to go there. I don't think he's going to go there. I think there's the potential for things to go there. I think he'll be throwing a lot of rocks, like Ella said, at the very real issues and the way the mayor has handled some of these issues. I think, for example, the Violence Reduction Initiative and gang violence, that's a very fair point of criticism when the mayor comes out and says, I have a plan in place that will take care of this, and we've really seen very few inroads there. And I know that's central to Larry's campaign. So I think it should be a pretty hard-fought campaign, I would think.
I was just going to ask, of the stories that you watched this year, which one do you feel was the most underreported? That while all the screaming and the histrionics were going on, there was this little story that came along and you thought, you know, if I could, I'd give it a lot more attention, I'd give it a lot more exposure, and it just got buried under the snow, the avalanche.
I personally think on the national level, these allegations of Russian and outside interference with the election, putting aside all politics, I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, neither, you voted, you didn't vote, even the allegation that this could have happened, and let's face it, there's an avalanche of evidence that it did happen, and the way that it seems like the majority of Americans just want to either disregard it, ignore it, or pretend it didn't happen, that's dangerous.
Right.
Ellis?
I think here locally, I mean, what's going on with the school system, not the Ottawa, not the headline things, but what's happening underneath with the actual quality of the education that children are receiving or not receiving, the schools that are about to be taken over by the state of Tennessee because they're underperforming so badly, things like that, really the nuts and bolts of what's going wrong in our education system here has been overshadowed by bus accidents and, you know, pool cues and other things that make for better headlines, but really kind of tend to hide the underlying weakness of our school system.
I think last year, you know, we talked about the civil unrest in the black community between the black community and law enforcement. And I think that still is an issue. And it's sort of I have sort of a problem with it because, you know, when you see these videos and you see the things that are happening when police officers confront African Americans, and I know that sometimes that we haven't seen everything, we didn't see what happened before, but my feeling is that no one should die, should lose their lives from these confrontations, if you call them, if you want to call them.
There's one other thing that happened, my quiet story that happened, that not a lot of publicity. There's a smoking ban if you live in public housing.
That's right. Yeah, that's true.
Okay. You know, it's a little thing. If you're a convicted felon, you can't visit your mom in public housing. We know that. You can't be there, but now you can't smoke either. Listen, Tim Hooker, you've helped keep this thing alive for more than a decade. We cannot thank you enough, and please come back sooner. Brian Joyce will be listening to you on the radio.
Thank you.
Ellis, we'll have to start to get up on our blogs and what have you, and John will be reading about you in the newspaper.
Thank you.
That'll do it for this edition of Point of View. I'm Maurice Lewis. Now, next week, it's all about an original art form. The music is called jazz. We'll have a live band here with us when Point of View continues.
Closed captioning provided by the following.
Funding for this program is brought to you by Barnett & Company, specializing in tax-efficient strategies for the preservation and distribution of family wealth, offering continuous investment management with a focus on long-term strategies. Areas of service include investment, estate, education, and retirement planning. Barnett & Company, the power of compound returns over time. More information can be found on the web at barnettandcompany.com.